they're the predominant form.
Was here, student, non-traditional students, I would say.
Yes.
Non-traditional students who started back a few years back, supposed to be held secret apparently, and he took kind of a long way around to getting his architectural degree. But after he left SAC, he finished up at the University of Houston, got his undergraduate degree in U of H, and got his master's degree there too. Since then, and currently, he is a candidate for his doctoral degree in architecture at A&M.
Wow.
And currently the assistant professor at Texas A&M Kingsville in the architectural engineering department. He is the only architect of type in the whole program. So he represents not only SAC, but the architects in general. So, James.
Well, thank you all for having me here, and thank you very much for the gift. I'll enjoy it. My name is Jim Glusing. You can call, depending upon when you know me from, it's Jim, James. It was always depending upon if there was already a Jim in the classroom. I was James, whatever's left over. But as I said, I'm an assistant professor down at Kingsville, and I really appreciate being invited here because I just made an assistant professor, which means everything that I've done in the past got zeroed out, and I'm starting all over again, so I really appreciate the invitation. I'll talk to you a little bit about how I got into architectural engineering. It was certainly nothing that I ever expected when I started studying architecture. But if you want to move forward here, these are the universities I went to. I've grayed out the first three because in my parents and my parents were brilliant people. And I had studied architecture since the 7th grade, and between my parents and the counselors at my schools, they never told me that you had to go, not every university had architecture. So I flunked out of Southwest Texas. I went back to Kingsville to A&I to work for 12 years in the car business. Went to Austin College to get my grades up high enough that I could get into San Antonio College. And that's when I actually started going to architectural school. Spent some time at one semester at the University of Colorado at Boulder, where I found out that I could get the rest of my education for my second semester there, so I quickly came home to UTSA. And there were some discussions with accreditation, and I quickly ran over to the University of Houston because I thought the accreditation committee was going to win that argument, and I needed to get out of school. But that's my history, and that's where I've been so far. I started here at San Antonio College. Mr. Connor was one of my professors, and this was an architectural, this was supposed to be an architectural building, the new architectural building that was going to be out here on the corner of the campus that I designed. I was very proud of it. I've been showing this off to my students until the model finally died 2 years ago. And this was built in the 90s, so it's been in a while. But everything that I did here, I coasted through, even through my PhD, I'm coasting on what I learned here at San Antonio College. So don't be thinking, oh, it's a junior college at San Antonio College. You have a lot bigger opportunity here than what you think about. I had Mr. Espamilla for freehand design course. He absolutely forbade me to use a straight edge. It was terrible. I felt like I couldn't communicate without a straight edge because everything I'd done since the 7th grade, I had a T-square and a triangle. But I drew the, painted. This is the only watercolor that I've ever really done. I think somewhere in here, I don't know if y'all have the death plant, the plant from hell. That little palm is still here. Students before me in the 90s had to draw that same plant, and I've seen the drawings that they've drawn in their presentations from 10 years before me.
Try 70s.
I feel bad for that. That's why this is the only freehand work that you're going to see from me in this class. And then I went on to the University of Colorado at Boulder. One of the things that I learned from Mr. Connor was that I was probably never going to push the envelope as a designer. My designs were very sedate. I felt that my argument was, my father was a lawyer, he was a director of a bank for 52 years. The difference between me and everybody else in my class is I knew I could take my drawings and I could get my client a bank loan to build it. He did not have to be independently wealthy. But what he did give me a lot of support on was my presentation skills. I wasn't afraid. I learned from him not to be afraid to break out of a single plane. This was a federal home loan competition. I won 3rd place. In the competition, I found out that the best design never wins. I was told that every judge has their favorite, and no judge is willing to vote for anybody else's favorite, so it's probably the 3rd place one that wins 1st place, just because of the way competition judging works out. But the other thing that happened in the University of Colorado is they were stunned. I mean, these people worked beautiful plastic. They did acrylics. They did injection molding. And I thought it was fantastic. I did this little drawing in Prismacolor pencils. I said, how did you do that? Who taught you? Where did you learn these things? And I said, well, San Antonio College. So what I learned from here at the University of Colorado is it doesn't matter what you know something different from another region. So anything that you learn here and you take someplace else, it's going to be different and you're going to be thought of as magic. You guys have been here. Prismacolor pencils isn't magic to you, but it is at the University of Colorado. And then from Ms. Sterner at UTSA, when I came back, Ms. Sterner taught me another lesson. I absolutely hate abstract. I hate abstract. And Ms. Sterner made me do this abstract of a plant. And I said, Ms. Sterner, why are you making me do this? And she said, I said, I hate it. And she said, yes, I know. I'm making you do it because you hate it. You'll learn everything that you want to do because you want to do it. This is important, and you won't learn it on your own, so I need you to learn to do it for me because it's an important aspect. And I thank you very much for that because that's a conversation that I try to pass on to my own students, as well as not to be afraid. Break out and be willing to try things. I went over to the University of Houston, and I got caught up in the Sasakawa International Center for Space Architecture.
Nice.
It's no longer part of the College of Architecture there. It's a master's degree in space, Master of Science in Space Architecture. But we did work with the Texas Aerospace Commission. I was able to present part of my work at the World Space Congress. It meets every 10 years. Professor Larry Bell was there. I found out the power of working together with other people. We were working for the Texas Aerospace Commission to develop spaceports, commercial spaceports in the state of Texas. Each student, instead of having all of us design a business center like I designed, we were in a team. I designed the business center, somebody else designed the hotel, somebody else designed the emergency facility, somebody else designed the security center, and we came up with a development scenario for Cerrito, Texas. At the time, there were 3 different locations they were looking into to putting in an international spaceport. Cerrito, Texas was outside of my hometown. We found out that would be a monumentally bad thing. It was in a county with 450 people in it. They wanted to bring in 5,000 new employees. And that meant that suddenly the people that had lived there for generations would no longer be in charge of the county government. When we explained that to them, they said, we'll push it one county further south where there's a bigger population center. My hometown still hates me for it. We also found out in near Houston, there was a site that couldn't possibly have a spaceport put on it because it was so built up. All they wanted was all the research funding money from the Texas and the federal government to see that they couldn't put on a spaceport on it. The spaceport was eventually built out at Fort Stockton, and they've already been launching, they were launching years ago. My first professional work was I built a model of the Houston Port Authority monument that was being built. It's on the right-hand picture here. And I went out and took a picture of the building and used Photoshop to superimpose it and show my work. My first out-of-state work was at Dynamic Drafting in Redlands, California. Basically what happened there, I became the senior designer from the first day, because what had happened was the forest fires had wiped out everything in the largest county in the United States. People were having to wait 9 months just to put down a $10,000 retainer to speak to an architect, to consider talking to them 9 months further down the road. So architectural firms, or excuse me, drafting firms were actually putting together plans and taking them to the cities, and homes were just being stamped with engineering stamps rather than going to the architects, because there was just too much work. There was literally not enough people there to do the work. So I had an opportunity, I think. I jumped into the deep end. It was 2 young gentlemen that were 23 years old. They had their own firm. It was a drafting firm. They were doing very, very well. They looked up and said, gee, all these people with money don't trust 23-year-olds without a college degree. No matter how much we know, we need an old guy. I went out there when I was 40. And so that was me. I was the face of the company. I was the senior designer, which pretty much the people knew what they wanted. It was just a matter of going out and doing contract work, making sure the plans went through the city planning offices. But I learned a lot out there. And then when I came back to Kingsville, Texas, I had, Dynamic Drafting had decided to go its own way. It had been swallowed up by an architectural firm. One of the principals had decided to go get his license, and he was working for the architectural firm doing his internship. And I just kept doing some designs for some carpenters out there for 2 or 3 years, and just did everything over the internet. And this is where I am now, the Alumni College of Engineering, and that picture looks much clearer on my laptop computer screen. The Alumni College of Engineering started its architectural engineering program inside the civil engineering department. It was an offshoot. We're a merged department. And when they say that, they're joking about the fact that I'm in charge of the department, it was easy to be in charge. I was the only professor in the department for 3 years. I'm the only guy there. So I was in charge of me. That was pretty much it. They have absolutely no idea what architecture is. As far as the engineers are concerned, civil engineers, those are going to be the structural engineers that you work with in the future, they are absolutely convinced that architects play with crayons and engineers get paid. And I will pretty much say that's the way I feel about it too sometimes. Architects get the joy, the creative joy of designing. And then engineers are going to steal all your money. But that's where I am right now. My research has taken me through, at Texas A&M right now, I have been doing work in history. And I work with the Center for Heritage Conservation with Bob Warden out of College Station. And one summer we went to Belize. It was a wonderful 3 weeks full of mosquitoes and mud and rain, because with all the beautiful beaches, we went to the jungle and never came out. We were learning, trying out, testing methods of inexpensive, I just want to make sure I'm not going over too much time here.